Hello, everyone. Welcome to our show today. We have a fantastic panel, and I will introduce them in a moment. But before I do that, let me ask you this question. Have you ever watched TV, film, or a stage production involving a jury and the jury process and wondered just how much of that is real and how much of that is just made up? Well, today, we're going to have the opportunity to ask those questions to our distinguished panel, will try to demystify some of the things that are real from some of the things that are made up. So first, before we get into those questions, let me introduce our distinguished panel. So to my far left, or right, I should say, we have Judge Stuart Schiffman, who served as an associate circuit judge in the 7th Judicial Circuit of Illinois from 1983 until his retirement in January 2006. His assignment covered all areas of the law from small claims to class action litigation, with an occasional murder thrown in for spice. He's presided over 175 criminal and civil jury trials and is a member of the Illinois Judicial Association, the American Bar Association, and other distinguished organizations. Prior to his judicial career, Judge Schiffman served as an assistant state's attorney in Sangamon County and as an assistant attorney general for the state of Illinois. After retirement, Judge Schiffman joined the office of the state appellate defender, serving for 2 years until leaving the office for private practice. He currently is an adjunct faculty member at the University of Illinois, where he taught evidence, law, literature, and the great trials in American law. And in the middle, we have Professor Nancy S. Martyr, and she is a professor of law at Chicago-Kent College of Law in Chicago, Illinois. She is a graduate of Yale College, Cambridge University, and Yale Law School, where she was an articles editor of the Yale Law Journal. Professor Martyr has clerked at every level of the United States federal court system, including a 2-year clerkship with Justice John Paul Stevens at the U.S. Supreme Court. She has written numerous articles on the American jury system. Her articles on the jury have appeared in law reviews such as Northwestern, Texas, and Southern California Law Review. And she's written a book on the jury called The Jury Process, and has written and is also the organizer of the Law Review Symposium on the jury, including one on the 50th anniversary of 12 Angry Men. And next to her is Marty A. Dolan. And we call him Marty, and Marty is the owner and principal of Dolan Law Offices in Chicago. He has been a practicing trial lawyer for 20 years in the area of personal injury, wrongful death, and civil rights litigation. Mr. Dolan graduated from John Marshall Law School in 1988 and St. Mary's University in 1985. He's tried 49 jury trials to verdict. He holds the second highest verdict in DeKalb County's history for medical negligence cases. He was nominated one of the 40 under 40 attorneys to watch in Chicago. He was nominated by his peers as a super lawyer for the past 6 years and selected to the leading lawyers network consisting of the top 5% attorneys in Illinois. He has appeared before the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals and the Illinois Supreme Court. We are privileged today to have an extraordinary panel to help us cut through some of the myths and learn about some of the realities of really what happens in the court. So let's get started. Before we get into some of the parts, and we're going to cover the jury selection, opening statements, examination, cross-examination, closing statements, and then jury deliberation. So before we get into that, I'd like to ask the panel some kind of what I call 30,000 feet questions. And the first one is, how does the way trials are portrayed in film and TV affect your preparation for trial, or does it at all? And Marty, as the sitting litigator here, let's start with you.
Well, Latham, I mean, in preparation for a trial, which is something that people don't see on a TV show or movies, which is probably the most involved process. As trial lawyers and litigators, we always have to take into consideration the element of what goes on in pop culture or society and some preconceptions of what potential jurors might have. So in preparation, you always have to keep that in mind when selecting a jury, and if any potential juror makes a comment in selection, obviously you have to deal with that comment as far as any preconceived notion as how juries and trials basically proceed. Almost inevitably, and I think we talked about this at one point before the show, somebody makes a comment in the courtroom, the lawyers do, that what you're about to see for the next day or 7 days or month or whatever it is not TV.
Is there any film or show any of you feel accurately portrays or comes close to portraying how a real trial plays out?
I think to some extent the original Law and Order, and I'm a big fan of the original Law and Order. I don't watch some of the spin-offs, but the original Law and Order at least has many of the aspects of real trials, including some of the preparation and the criminal investigation that, for example, in a criminal case that goes on. Now, having said that, they have a lot of things that are not very true to life, including such things as lawyers and judges arguing motions in the hallways, and just a lot of last-minute things that always go on in their trial segments. But I think to some extent that show is perhaps the most realistic that I've seen over the past years.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree as far as the transition. If looking at how a prosecution occurs from the arrest,
right,
from the investigation, how it proceeds to the process, ultimately then to the trial. I fully agree with the judge. You don't see the pomp and circumstance behind the scenes like you might see on TV, where lawyers are arguing with the judge in chambers, and there's dramatics and things to that effect. Typically, when you're outside of the quote-unquote arena of the courtroom, things are fairly civil, professional, and you deal with it on that level, which is the opposite of what you see on TV.
Right.
So Nancy, why do you think Americans and other cultures, because these TV shows are syndicated throughout the world, why do you think there's such a fascination with these dramatic TV shows?
Well, I think part of it is for the jury system. Many other countries don't have such a system, and so there's a fascination with the American jury system and what goes on in trial, and people in other countries watch these shows and think that this is amazing, but we don't have this system, so I must learn more. And I've attended conferences where people have talked about these programs as if they're their own system, as if they exist in their own country. So they've really transcended borders.
I also think our legal system brings all of these people into it. After all, we allow citizens to be jurors in our cases, civil and criminal cases. We have jurors, people on the street who turn out to be witnesses in cases. And I also think, finally, there's a great fascination with law and lawyers, and I think many people in our society, they can't be doctors, they can't be chemists, they can't be scientists, but they have mouths and they can talk and they can be like lawyers, and sadly, or perhaps, well, I'm not sure what it is, but we lawyers we're trained in the art of argument and persuasion, and people love to do that even if they aren't lawyers. So I think that there's that kind of just enjoyment of the whole process that they get involved in.
Well, let's talk about the components. The first one, let's talk about just jury selection. So, Judge, is there a good juror?
I think there are good jurors, and but we always have great debates. If we had a room here of 50 lawyers, and you asked us what makes good jurors, you'd probably get more than 50 answers. Every lawyer has their belief in what makes a good juror and what makes a bad juror. You have there's sociological views, and there's all kinds of views. From my perspective, we want people, at least I think, jurors who can be fair and who can just listen to the evidence and don't come in with any preconceptions. I don't care what kind of jobs they have, what walk of life, what nationality they are. I think they'll be good jurors if they just listen. And I've always believed as a lawyer and as a judge that, although you have 12 people on a jury, what you're really shooting for are to get 5 or 6 good jurors. And sadly, or just, and the reality of it is that there'll be many people on the jury who will just kind of follow along. They're not leaders, they're followers. You want to get leaders to be on your side, and the others you'll worry about afterwards.
And Nancy, you get back to the deliberation, but before you get that, you've got to have the selection of jurors. What do you think makes a good juror? Someone, when he gets back in that box, will do the right work, do the right job.
Well, the thing is, you can't predict how jurors will interact with each other. But the bottom line for me would be somebody who enters the trial willing to hear both sides and not have a fixed point of view when he or she enters the courtroom. That would sort of be the bottom line.
And Marty, how do you, since you have to select, how do you know you've got the right person?
I mean, it's so hard to say. I mean, there's so many, people and companies and experts, quote unquote, that can lead you down the path with a checklist as to what's a good juror, depending on the type of case, whether it's a civil case or a medical case or a criminal case or whatever. But I think we all agree from all aspects of where we come from that generally people are good, and the jury system is great. And Americans have to understand that this is one of the very few places in the entire world that they have the most power in the courtroom. And when people they understand that in the trial arena, it's a great thing. And too many people have a preconceived notion that it's a bad thing that they get called for jury duty. They get the summons in the mail or what have you. But I find after our trials, almost every single time, that jurors become great friends for life, and they finally get it. They see the process at work, and they understand how great of a thing it is. So, I guess to answer your question is that you don't want somebody who's got a preconceived agenda walking in the door.
Well, we have just 1 minute before we have to take our break, and I'd like to ask the question, why do some trials have anonymous jurors? Professor?
Well, it's a way of protecting the jurors, particularly if you're worried that they might be harassed, that they might be security might be an issue. So it's a way of keeping them from outside influence.
It's also a recent a trend to keep our friends in the media from getting too involved in looking into jurors' backgrounds while the trials are going on. We recently had a trial here in Illinois where the media was checking out jurors while the trial was going on and discovering that some of them had been less than truthful with the judge when they were selected for the jury.
Well, we'll come back and pick up on that, and we'll also talk about some of the other components that make up a trial. So viewers, come back. I think you're going to find some more exciting conversation with this distinguished and wonderful panel we have here today.